everybody, welcome to McFarland Minutes, our weekly podcast hosted by Natalie McFarland, me, and founder and president of McFarland Productions, and Scout Foster, our outreach marketing manager. In these episodes, you can expect deleted scenes, in-depth campaign reviews, project highlights, marketing concepts, book reviews, and a deep dive into the creative process at Off-Your-Rocker Films, and of course, invaluable lessons on mentorship, leadership, and the business of it all. We are so excited to be releasing our episodes every Sunday as your soft launch to Monday. Welcome to episode 10. This week, we get to introduce you to one of our really good friends, Gabrielle Homer, and her gambit of titles that we get to so gratefully work with her on. She's a member rancher, chief financial officer, corporate secretary, and treasurer of Painted Hills Natural Beef. If you haven't tried Painted Hills Natural Beef, you're missing out. Also, well-timed because this is coming out on Memorial Day weekend, so I'm guessing that at this very moment, I am probably grilling some Painted Hills right now while this episode is releasing. But she's also the president-elect of Oregon Cattle Women's and a grandma to two amazing, great, cute little kiddos. And so Gabrielle, thanks for joining us.
Serve on the board of directors for Bank of Eastern Oregon.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Bank of Eastern Oregon.
Come on, Natalie.
I missed one. I had them all listed even.
People ask me about the laundry list, but honestly, it's just in my nature to not sit still much. And I would be uncomfortable if I didn't push myself, to do things. And so I enjoy all the things. Each of them enrich me in some way. So it's good.
Yeah. Something that I think the first time we worked together was in 2019. I was trying to look back and determine if it was 19 or early 20, but I think it was 19. And the first thing I recognized about you and Will and really the whole Painted Hills family, but you in particular, was just your ability to pour into people and like how much you are just such a care and like, how can I help kind of person. And I just so admire that about you.
It's because it goes both ways. That's how you get the most out, is by pouring the most in.
Yeah, for sure. So you have a great story. Can you give us like an overview of Gabrielle and how do you get to where you are now?
So, both my parents grew up in New York City, which is kind of unique considering that we now live in the least populated county in the state of Oregon. So, if you think about, my mom grew up in Spanish Harlem in the Bronx and my dad in Brooklyn. My grandfather on my dad's side was a New York City police officer. And in the process of growing up, my mom in particular did not learn English until she went to school. So her parents both had an 8th grade education and came to the Bronx, and they had little Frances, and she didn't learn English till she went to school. And so she was kind of behind for a while, and eventually got accepted into an all-girls high school, and had to take the subway an hour each way to get to school. And when she graduated at 17, according to her, there were 3 options: get married. That wasn't in the picture. Be a teacher. She didn't want to be a teacher. So she took herself to Fordham Hospital, where she put herself through nursing school. And the reason that's kind of important is because I was raised by a really strong woman. And my father's mother also had a career, which in those days was very unusual. She was born in 1912, so you can do the math there, but she was a purchasing agent for a hospital in New York.
Oh, wow.
And so
That's very cool.
just a history of really strong women that, that raised me. So my parents came to Oregon after they met and got married, and I was born in Portland at Good Samaritan Hospital, where my mom was working. She was a surgical nurse there. And then raised in Dallas, Oregon. And my dad was working for the juvenile department. He was the head of the juvenile department in Polk County. And my mom was a nurse for a Caterpillar plant. So she was an industrial nurse. And I went all through school in Dallas, went to Willamette University in Salem my freshman year, and then transferred to Oregon State University, where I completed a degree in economics. Went into banking, At the age of 12, I started driving hay truck. My parents had by then bought some property, and my dad on the side was doing custom hay farming, and we had a Christmas tree farm. And so I drove hay truck from the time I was 12, and I was on a horse from the time I was 3. So
Well,
even
having a
though,
Christmas tree
yeah,
farm had to be
Like
an
a real life
incredible
homework
experience
maybe.
as a
it
kid,
was.
for sure.
I love
It
that.
was. And it is a little bit, but it's also like a huge investment because it's 10, 12 years before you get a return on your investment with Christmas trees. So
Sure.
that was a lesson in patience and
I
being
bet
able
it
to,
was.
yeah. While today I'm working in the cattle industry, I was definitely raised in an agricultural environment by two people that grew up on the streets of New York. So it's kind of funny that way. But at 15, I went to work at the local newspaper and I was doing ad sales and subscription at that time. And so at later times in my career, I've gone back to that. It served me well. After college, I worked in insurance and then went through management training at a bank. So that stood me in good stead because I eventually became an operations manager. And fast forward about 30 years, I now sit on the board of directors for a bank. So all of those little pieces of my history, I feel like really play into the skill set of who I am today. And I value all of the experiences that I had, even the ones that, were negative or learning experiences. They made me who I am today.
Yeah, I talked about that with Jesse Jarvis actually. I was a guest on her podcast. It's been
Mhm.
quite a while ago now, but isn't it funny how like all the pieces of your life seemingly unrelated, right? From newspaper ad sales to working in the banking world and then growing up in ag and now you're in the cattle industry, the all of those things end up kind of making you who you are. I don't know. I just think it's such a cool deal.
I do too. You have to be open to it. Like you have to expose yourself. But I do. I value every single bit of it. I went through an illness in my 20s that caused me to make a career shift, and that's when I met my husband. And I probably wouldn't have valued him in the way that I did if I hadn't have gone through that experience. And then took me to, like I said, the least populated county in the state of Oregon. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Fossil's a cool place though. Like Fossil might be tiny, but man, it's a little tiny paradise out there and so shielded from the world in such a wonderful way and yeah, it's beautiful out there. So I think one of the things that we want to talk most about is leadership. Scout, I think you had a little bit that you wanted to ask on Gabrielle on leadership if you want to
Yeah,
take it away.
so when Natalie was reading your resume to us at the beginning, I was kind of thinking about how did you find these positions or did they find you? Did you seek out leadership opportunities? You mentioned that it was just uh, in your nature to be busy all the time, but did you seek out these or did you just stumble, into the position?
It's a great question. I think that that kind of circles back to me saying just being open to new
Mhm.
experiences and finding the places that you feel like you
Mhm.
fit or that your skill set fits. So, for example, my position on the bank, I had been working with that bank for years and years and years, and that meant that when I had a bad experience, I reached out and let them know. If I had a good experience, I reached out and let them know. So they kind of knew the caliber of person that I was and that I'm always looking for central ground. Um, we all have value, we all have importance, and I feel like culturally we've gotten to a place where it feels sometimes like people are being divided more than they're being brought together. And I'm always looking for those opportunities to be brought together. And then for cattle women, they gave us an award at Painted Hills Natural Beef. They gave us the Business of the Year award. And I wasn't a member. I was a member of Oregon Cattlemen's Association, but not Cattle Women. I didn't even really understand the distinction between the two. And when they called us and said they were giving us the award, I was like, oh, maybe I should join. And so I did, and went to an event, a mid-year meeting, knowing virtually no one. I had a very superficial acquaintance with a couple of members, and that was it. And I knew no one else. And I instantly felt at home. And these are women that are active in production agriculture. I am not. I say that all the time. I'm not the one pulling the calves. I'm not the one working the cattle. I'm the one figuring out how to make the money work. Um, but by the same token, I appreciate everything they do. And when I'm out promoting beef and promoting the lifestyle and promoting the cattle industry, I'm working for them. And it just felt like a very natural progression. When they asked me if I would step up to be president, I said yes.
Oh
So,
man, yeah.
yeah.
When you told me that you were going to accept the president-elect position at Oregon Cattle Women's, my first thought was, how perfect is this, right? Like our industry has a tendency to be a little siloed, right?
Mhm.
And like we very much have segments of the industry. To have you as part of that with women who are on the production side is such a blessing, I feel like. I think it's such a cool combination of your gigantic background with Painted Hills Natural Beef, your financial background in the beef industry, and their production background. Like there is no better collaboration, I think, than that group of women with you as part of it. So yeah, I think it was such a great idea for you to be president. So,
I feel
next year
really
you start.
fortunate. Yeah, it's a 2-year process. So I will be installed at the end of next year, so next December. And our
Gotcha.
current president, Morgan Crom, is the epitome of working cattle woman. I mean, she's working a lease,
Mm-hmm.
she's got her own cattle, she's working for someone else, she's on a horse most days, she's doing all the things. And at an earlier stage in her career than I am, she's younger than I am. And I feel like together it's like the best of both worlds. We're the yin and the yang, and what I'm missing, she has, and what she's missing, I have. And I just absolutely adore working with her. So
Oh
it's a
yeah,
privilege. It's a
I've
privilege.
had, I've had the pleasure of getting to know her a little bit through you, and I just love her too.
Yeah.
She's a great president of Cattle Women's. Um, let's see. Something that you and I have talked about many, many times is your ability to, or the need as a leader to take care of your people. And I think that you've talked about that. You know, I remember a story, I think maybe it was snowing really bad or something like that. And it just was gonna get a little too questionable to be driving home. And there was a moment where he said, "This isn't worth it. It's not world peace. Send them home. We'll pay them for the rest of the day. It's more important to keep our people safe." Can you talk about filling or feeding into your people and like why that's so critical as a leader?
Yeah. Well, I really valued your podcast talking about your company culture and people first, because that's kind of how I've always approached it too. It's probably why we get along. Um, but definitely, I'm always looking for the positive side in people to my detriment. I'll say that in the outset. And there are times in my life where I should have let people go sooner. And that's a huge learning lesson. But the people that stick with you, the people that are meaningful, the people that are supposed to be with you need to know that they're valued, and whether
Hmm.
that's personally or professionally. And I feel like in our company, we've been able to embrace that. And, we've been able to share. I make sure that I tell people thank you at the end of the day. I make sure that if they have concerns, that I try and address them to the best of my ability. Doesn't mean I've been perfect. Doesn't mean I haven't had to ask for help. I've most definitely had to ask for help in the past. But that is something that I say all the time is it's not world peace. It's just beef. It doesn't take precedent over the people. So if you need to get home and be safe, get home, be safe. You have a sick kid. I am not going to make a mom choose between her sick child and her job. And the beauty of our group is we've become so close that we're all invested in each other. And and are able to give each other that support. So when somebody has a sick kid, we say, stay home, we've got you. We're going to cover you. And I feel like that's been definitely a benefit to the company as well, because we have incredibly loyal employees that have stuck with us through thick and thin and tough days and tough changes and worldwide pandemics and financial crises, and they still show up every day. The
Yeah.
other saying that I love to use is when we hire a new employee, I always say, I challenge you to make a mistake I haven't already made.
Mm-hmm.
And bring it to me when you do, and I will help you, because I promise you I've made it already. There's been one or two that have actually taken me up on it and found one that I hadn't made, but only one or two. Not very. It doesn't happen very often because I've been doing this a long time, and I performed
Yeah, I
every
have
function
this.
in the company. Yeah.
I was
So
just gonna say I have this later in my notes, but you were basically employee number one at Painted Hills Natural Beef, and like since then have been with the brand and grew the brand and grew the team, you know. So yeah, quite literally, you know every position in
I
the
know every
company.
mistake that can be made. Although, there's always room for more, I
So,
guess.
sometimes there's a creative one, you
Oh man.
know.
Oh man. Yeah.
Excitement.
um,
Especially these days. Whew.
Yeah, Scout and I have talked about this before in podcasts and just the importance of finding the right people, you know, and I think you guys do that very well at Painted Hills, and it's the right people, not necessarily for us, it's not necessarily the people in the right places, although a little different at Painted Hills because we need you there, right,
Yes.
physically
Yes.
there, but can you talk a little bit about like how Painted Hills finds the right people? How do you
Yeah.
know when you've got a good one?
I'll tell you that from the beginning, that was one of the challenges, is that the board felt very strongly that this business needed to provide jobs in Wheeler County. And that was one of the goals. And that was one of our missions, because at times I've wanted to either have distance employees or take an employee. We have a inside sales manager here in the office. It would be a lot easier for them to do this job from Portland. I'll be
Hmm.
honest. And at times, we've had the opportunity to move them into one of our vendor partner locations, and the board has just said no. They want
Hmm.
the jobs here in Wheeler County. So that became a mandate and a challenge, and also an opportunity. And I had to learn to look for the people that had the right mindset, not necessarily the right skill set.
Hmm.
And I can so vividly remember sitting in a meeting here in the community for one of the nonprofits locally, and a gentleman that was running that business stating that he was having a hard time securing staff for his office because I was taking all the good people. And
Sorry, not sorry.
and I was like, yeah, sorry, not sorry. And it's like, well, when you recognize good people, there were times I hired people that I didn't really need to hire, because it was a person that I knew we could work with and that I wanted to work with. And so I would rather bring them in and stick them, and work with them in the queue and find where their skill set fit. Where do they shine? What do they bring to the table that can grow the company? And more times than not, it's worked. Times it hasn't, but more times than not, it's worked.
What are some of the things that you look for, like the right mindset or like attitude? What are some things that you keep an eye out for?
Um, the people that look for positivity and opportunity rather than negativity and
Mm-hmm.
challenge. That's
Hmm.
probably first and foremost, because we're all facing negativity and challenge. If we want to find it, it's smacking us in the face every single day. It's the people that have the ability to pivot that and take it and remind ourselves. It's not that we don't all do it. We do. I do too. But then remind myself, hey, okay, where's the opportunity here? I see the challenge. Let's find the opportunity. And then also equally the people that are able to work in that team environment that I was referring to, where, we've got each other's
Mm-hmm.
back. And
Yeah.
it took years really to develop to where we are today. All of us finding where we fit, finding where our skill set fit, finding where our interests lie. Um, you know, you just don't always know when you bring that person in. But as you work with them, you can identify where those skills fit and fit them into the piece.
Yeah, you guys do such a good job of developing people, like you were saying, it's the right person, but maybe doesn't have the right skill set. Your ability to develop that skill set is pretty incredible. Not every company has that talent, and I feel like you and Will and the rest of the leadership there have done that very well.
Well, it was kind of necessity too, but it's been a privilege. I mean, I've been privileged to work with so many great people. And, I think back on the list of people that have come through our doors as an employee, and some for as short as like 2 days, and others for 20 years, right? And each one was an opportunity to learn and grow.
hmm Um, One of the things that Painted Hills does and has done over the years is really focus on this in-person experience between the brand and the person, right? So from demos to working with festivals and organizations and things like that to being involved in the OSU Alumni Association and kind of what you guys do there. I think where I'd like to go is actually with OSU alumni. Can you talk a little bit about your personal involvement with them and how Painted Hills has also been involved in them? I know they also gave an award recently to Painted Hills. Can you
Well,
talk a little bit
yep.
about OSU?
Well, it is kind of funny that Will and I both went to Oregon State. We didn't know each other there. I actually am a couple years older and graduated 3 years ahead. Um, so I like to tell the story. I hope it's not inappropriate, but I like to tell the story that the only class that we had together at the time, and we didn't even know it, was sex education. So my senior year and his freshman year, we were in the same sex ed class, but we didn't know it
I
at the
didn't
time.
even know
So
that.
I
That's
love
I
that's
that.
know
great.
That's fantastic.
it's one of the just, you just
How
can't
does that
make
come
this
up in
stuff up.
conversation?
And here you are married with two boys,
And here we are today. Yep, exactly. He's gonna
But
shoot
how
me
did
for
you figure
saying
that
that,
out?
but it's all right. He can get over it. Just comparing like what
Okay.
classes, because he was an ag economics student and I was an economics student. So we knew we probably had some kind of
Something
overlap, other
similar.
than he was in freshman classes and I was in senior classes, right? And so we happened to look at our electives and I said, well, did you take rocks and stars? And he's like, no, I don't think I did. And I said, how about sex ed? And he's like, yeah. And I said, spring term 88. And he said,
Oh
yep.
my gosh.
So
That is funny.
That's so funny. Kevin and I didn't know each other. We went to the same middle school and the same high school, and we didn't
what?
meet each other until college, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin's a year older than me, and I was, don't tell anyone, but I was slightly misguided and a Duck fan when I first moved up here. And Civil War week rolls around, right? This is junior high school, and one of our teachers, who is still an incredible friend to me, and he just like takes everything in stride, but a teacher who is a Duck fan and me and a couple of other students basically ducked this OSU Beaver fans room, right? So we had like green and yellow streamers everywhere. You couldn't even walk into this room. Like we absolutely obliterated this room. Kevin's first class the next morning was that class. So he was in the classroom that we had just absolute green and yellowed, which by the way, go Beavs, I've since come to my senses, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
which
I know you
which
have.
mis-
Yeah.
which Mac
Yeah.
loves that I came to my senses later, but it's so funny that like you guys were accidentally in the same room and kind of sort of Kevin and I too for a number
Mhm.
of years before we met each other, but
Yeah,
that's
small world.
awesome.
So I'm a firm believer in the importance of education, not necessarily the piece of paper, and we could talk about that too, but just like we talked about, opening yourself up to the opportunity to learn. And so it was very important to me that we offer internships through the company. And we have done that many, many times, mostly with Oregon State. We have done a couple of other schools. I think we've had one from University of Idaho. We've had one from Texas Tech. Um, Yeah, you can say it. There it is.
Wreck 'em from Scout.
Just settle,
But mostly from Oregon State, and so I've just always kind of been in touch with the university, but never felt a real connection as an alum until Dr. Stacy Simonich became the dean of the College of Ag. And keep in mind that my husband is the College of Ag graduate. I am not. I graduated with a degree in economics from the College of Liberal Arts. But I consider myself, I hope they consider me kind of an honorary College of Ag student, because from the time that I met Dean Stacy, I just really felt compelled to participate in whatever I could to support the university. They're doing really good work. There's things that they've done I don't agree with, but that's true of anything in life. I don't get hung up on that. I get hung up on what can I bring to the table? What can I support? What can be a benefit to them and to our communities and to our state? And so we got an award years ago from the extension. So then Will received an award from the College of Ag as a distinguished alumni, which was a fabulous experience for us to be on campus for that. We took the opportunity to do a agricultural tour with Dean Stacy and some of the other alums, and just really felt like this was an opportunity for us to give back to the university that gave us so much. Will has given some support to his fraternity. He was a Theta Chi, and so we've been back to the house. We've been, supported that way. And yes, I am getting ready to consider another opportunity to serve the university by fall. So
Yes.
Maybe by the time this comes out, we'll know.
yeah, we should know. I should know by the 25th of April.
What? Only
Yeah.
10 more days?
Okay, cool. So
yep.
we'll
Only 10
What?
more days from recording.
10 more days.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah.
for you.
Yep.
from
There you go.
recording.
Yep.
You have also taken the opportunity to go on some of the OSU alumni trips and things like that. Australia was one of them. Do you want to? That was associated with OSU, right? I don't remember exactly how that
No,
went.
that one was actually with Rabo Agri-Finance. So while I serve on the board of directors, that's okay. While I serve on the board of directors for Bank of Eastern Oregon, we also have a relationship with our feedlot with Rabo Agri-Finance. And Rabo is kind of the opposite. I serve on the board of Bank of Eastern Oregon because, first of all, they are so invested in our local communities, and I appreciate that, and I want to keep them going strong, and we do a significant amount of banking with them. But when we started our feedlot, we needed a different type of financing that the Bank of Eastern Oregon didn't have available. And so we had formed a relationship with Rabo Agri-Finance, which is a worldwide banking organization. And so in 22, we were selected. Actually, in 19, I was selected to travel on a women in agricultural trip down to the Monterey area in California.
Oh, that's right. I remember that
yes,
now. I forgot about that.
4 other women that were customers, and then 4 women that were employees of the bank. And we got to tour lettuce growing, and we got to tour wineries, and we got to tour packing houses and lots of different things in production agricultural in what is kind of the garden of the Western United States, right? Beautiful, beautiful area. And met some amazing women that I'm still friends with today, and really expanded my appreciation for the different roles that women play in agriculture that sometimes we don't always talk about or look at and think about. And then in 22, we were invited to do something similar. Do I have that right? 23? Maybe it was 23. And this was a trip to Australia. And Will and I were both privileged to be accepted on the tour. And we spent 2 weeks looking at production agriculture in Australia, the eastern side of Australia. And it was amazing. It was fun to talk about the similarities and the differences because there's both, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, as people, we were very compatible, but a lot of their production techniques were different. They deal with different levels of drought. I mean, what we think of as drought and what they think of as drought are two different things. What they think of as a lot of grass and what we think of as a lot of grass are two different things. But as people, as human beings, we just really jived. In fact, one of the stations that we visited and toured, their daughter came to the United States several months later and stayed with us. I mean, that's how, and I literally have been texting with other people that were on that tour. We've just formed those kinds of close relationships and feel very privileged for that. And then the next year, traveled with Dean Stacy to the Netherlands, and again, just taking a look at university settings, production agricultural settings. We looked at dairies and cattle production and nursery stock and the use of friendly pests to take care of non-friendly pests. I mean, just all the different things, different ways that they are really, really, really efficient in how they utilize land, especially in those smaller countries like the Netherlands. They produce a tremendous amount of agriculture with far less resources than what we have here in the United States. So it was really fun to see and informative to see what they can do with some really great inspiration and dedication.
Yeah, so the agriculture innovation, and I think
Mhm.
Painted Hills does that too, there's not a whole lot of rainfall in fossil Oregon, right?
True.
So how you manage your land and manage your cattle sort of simultaneously, or maybe one managing the other, is a big part of that when you're ranching in somewhere like fossil.
Yes, I didn't really appreciate it because I grew up somewhere where you got 50 inches of rain a year, and here we get about 15. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that it's not only the number of inches you get, but when you get it. The timing
Ah,
is
yes, the timing.
everything. And so if it doesn't come at the right time of year where the crops are trying to grow, it's almost not worth having. I mean, it is worth having, but it's not as
It's
valuable.
always good.
It's always
Yeah.
good, but it's not as
It's
valuable if you don't get it when you need it. So, and the
sure.
same thing, right, our neighbors to the north, on the Columbia Plateau with the wheat, the wheat growers, same kind of thing. And, I've learned to look at the wheat fields and you can, see them growing practically by the hour and evaluate what the conditions have done to the wheat crop. And I have a lot of sympathy for that because, in agriculture, we're price takers. We aren't price setters. And so
Sure.
you're looking at what your commodity is going to be worth and what your inputs have brought to the table. And as things have skyrocketed and skyrocketed and skyrocketed, the prices haven't always moved accordingly that you get. So that's been a
Yeah.
huge challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, some of the projects well, let me back up. Texas Tech. So we've talked a lot about Oregon State University. Tech is also special to you and your family. Can you talk about Tech?
Yeah. So, my younger son, Cal, my older son, Trey, is working on the ranch with grandpa and his uncle and is married to the daughter of our inside sales manager. They started dating a month after I hired her, and I was so excited that she came to work with us. I had wanted to work with her for the longest time. And then here my son starts dating our daughter, and I'm like, do not mess this up. And
Don't screw it up, Trey.
don't screw it up. So that was like probably 17, I think. And now, they're married and have two kids. So I guess it all worked out the way it was supposed to. But our younger son got caught in the COVID time. And so he was a 2020 grad, and baseball was starting, and they had their uniforms, and their first game was supposed to be that Monday. School ended on Thursday. Spring break was a couple weeks away, and they said, we're just going to close down school till after spring break, and then we'll come back, and which never happened. And so he didn't get that senior year of baseball. He didn't get prom. He didn't get, all the things. So he went to work and was building fence, and there's a local rancher here that was also a basketball coach that they kind of took them under their wing, and he was living with them and working with them, and living part-time in our basement. And I thought he was going to be stalled forever. Because what happens next? What do you do? Trey and Alyssa moved home because school had closed down. They were attending community college, and everything had kind of shut down and gone online and virtual, and was weird. So Cal was living in our basement for a year and a half, and one day came up on July 31st and said, I just finished my application to Texas Tech University. And Will and I, both Beavers, both Oregon State, huge Oregon State supporters, and Will played football a couple years. He was a walk-on. I mean, we're Beavers all the way. But I'm like, Texas Tech, where is that? And in Lubbock, okay. And what's their mascot? A Red Raider? I don't even know what that is. So there was a sharp learning curve. Nothing, we knew nothing of it. And so, ironically, coincidentally, grace of God, I don't know, 10 days later, we were in Nashville, Tennessee at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association annual conference, which had been moved from February to August because of COVID. We were in Nashville for the show, and I was walking the trade show, and Texas Tech had a booth. And I walked into the booth and I said, hello, my name's Gabrielle Homer. My son has just applied to your university. I don't know anything about it. Can you guys tell me a little bit about Texas Tech? And they said, well, what program is he applying to? And I said, I think he applied to animal science. And they said, oh, talk to Shelby. She's right over there. Okay, so I walk up. Hi, Shelby. My name's Gabrielle Homer. I'm from Fossil, Oregon, and my son's just applied to your university, and I'm just trying to learn a little bit more about it. And she says, what's his name? And I said, Cal Homer. And she gets on her phone. She's scrolling through her phone, and she's like, oh, yeah, there's his application right there.
That's so cool.
When you put that in context, I came from the least populated county in the state of Oregon, a town of 350 people. I flew to Nashville, and I met someone from Lubbock, Texas, who had my son's college application on her phone.
Pretty crazy.
It was meant to be. So
it's such a class in being able to connect and care for people, right?
Yes.
If that gal had just said, oh, cool, I hope he gets it, if it had been that kind of an interaction, right, rather than, oh, I can find it, immediately could make a connection to him, that would have been a very different interaction. So cool.
Completely different. And she did. And so I said, well, Shelby, when will we know? And she said, well, you'll know by the end of next week. And I said, yeah, but classes start in 10 days. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, let's put everything in place so we're ready to go as if he's going to get in. And then if he does, then we'll just roll with it. And that is exactly what happened. The next Wednesday, he got his acceptance letter at 5 a.m. He came running upstairs. Saturday, we were on a plane. Sunday, we found him a place to live in a quad apartment with 3 strangers. Monday, she met us on campus, and he did all his testing and then took us to the dean of the College of Ag at that time. And we filled out his schedule, and Tuesday started classes, and he's just finishing his 4th year there today. So it has been an amazing experience for me personally, in addition to the fact that my son has had just an amazing, enriching college education. I ended up taking a digital marketing class online through Texas Tech, through their continuing ed, and having that really enhance my ability. As our company has gone through a lot of transitions, marketing has been one of the things that it just doesn't always need day-to-day attention like some of our other immediate concerns. And so it was getting kind of shuffled to the back of the priority list. And so I was working with Natalie and her company, which was fabulous, but I didn't know how to talk the language. And taking that class really allowed me to get a better understanding of the tools that are in front of us that we have been able to employ in the past 2 years. And it's been remarkable what you've done. That for what you have done with completely organic marketing and no budget is amazing. So,
Well, I mean, it certainly helps when we've got just an incredible product to put out there.
thank you.
Painted Hills. I think I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but when I first met you guys before I had ever tried Painted Hills or been out there, natural beef was just kind of another label to me. Like it can't be that different, right? It was my
Right,
my
right,
personal thought. I had not really had experience with beef done the way that you guys raise them and the consistency and the quality and all of those things. That I don't remember exactly what you cooked, but it was something with a skirt steak, and it was the best beef I had ever had in my entire life. I was like, this is the best. I want to work with these guys long term. And I think there's nothing more frustrating than going to the grocery store and picking up a steak, and you get home and it just doesn't taste like anything. It
right.
doesn't taste like that 5-star eating experience. And what I have always loved about working with y'all is every time I pull a piece out of the freezer or buy one out of B&D Meats would be our local supplier here, but there's suppliers all over. It doesn't matter like what cut I get, where I get it from, whether I ordered it online or whatever. Every single time it's that consistent quality eating experience. So, when we started talking about McFarland Productions coming on and working with Painted Hills on a regular basis, it was a no-brainer for me. So we've really loved every minute of, and we love you guys. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Same.
we
Yeah.
we are very we being a people first company, we're the same kind of thought process when we're bringing on a client too, is we also want to love the people and believe in the product, and Painted Hills since 19 has certainly been one of those for me. So yeah, thank
Yeah.
you for
That
having us
means a
that
lot.
long.
That means a lot. Well, in the Northwest, we're 4% of the cattle industry, beef cattle industry. And I think what created the original inspiration for Painted Hills back in the 90s was the fact that we do raise great beef in the Northwest, and
Hmm.
Painted Hills in particular. We're selective about how and where the cattle are raised, and the raising standards that they're raised under. But by the same token, as a whole, the Northwest just produces exceptional beef.
Hmm.
And so it was very frustrating for ranchers to, like you said, to go to a grocery store, and it was like do you win the lottery this week and get a decent steak or not?
Hmm.
And they knew they were raising quality cattle. So why is it so hard? And I feel like that really was one of the main inspirations, not to mention just the economic reasons between trying to create a value added program, but it was also like pride in what we do. And I know that, like I said, in the Northwest in particular, our ranchers are very dedicated to their craft, and they're looking out for the welfare of the animals, the care of the land, all of the things that kind of go into us what we think of as sustainability. And I know
Hmm.
that term can be used so many different ways, but it's keeping the land healthy so that we can, for future generations, continue to raise beef. And then, the flip side, you kind of brought this up earlier, then people get it in their mouth and they try it.
Hmm.
They come to us the first time for some of those claims: no hormones, no antibiotics, local ranchers, all of those things. They come back because they have a great experience. And standing
Hmm.
in a store as many times as I have over the past 25 years, I can tell you that people really do appreciate a good cut of beef.
Oh yeah, I love some of your demo stories, from the guy who's literally waiting for you to get there and get
Yeah.
set up to demos and
Yep.
everything in between, just your experience out there in demos. And it's really a testament to experiential marketing, which is kind of a buzz term right now, right?
Yeah.
But really all it comes down to is being actually humanly connected to your audience. And I feel
Yes.
like that's something that you know, we all strive to do with the Painted Hills brand, whether it's through social or through your guys' demos or through or OSU's Bees, Brews, and Barbecues,
Yes.
all of that is like, how do we have real human interactions with people? And I think you guys do that very well.
Isn't it ironic that in this day and age of so many tools to connect with each other, like where we are right now, and yet we're still craving that human face-to-face
Mm-hmm.
interaction. And so definitely I feel like those in-person events, we did the first taste wine event in Salem, which was fabulous, and just chatting with the folks that were there, and they got to sample some beef, and at 2 in the morning, I had a message through Messenger from one of the attendees thanking us for showing up. And yeah, don't ask why I was awake at 2 in the morning to get the message. But, it's just those kinds of things make you feel good. I can remember another demo where I was standing in a store and I talked to a couple, probably 10, 15 minutes. And I watched them go purchase a steak and put it in their basket. And then they came back around and they said, by the way, we're vegetarians, but we appreciate your story so much. And we do occasionally eat beef that we decided we wanted to take a steak home tonight. And that was like the highest form of compliment,
Yeah.
that
That's pretty incredible.
I made them feel comfortable. I made them feel comfortable enough to make that decision, make that purchasing decision. So,
Yeah, that's like true connecting with people, where they felt so compelled by your story that they saw their own beliefs, their own values in that. And they were able to, maybe make a purchase that they wouldn't have otherwise made. And the reality is they're probably Painted Hills fans for life. I wish we could follow up with them and just like have them pop up on this podcast, right?
yeah.
But yeah, like that's just such a cool thing. I have two more questions for you.
Go.
One of the things that you have been working on sort of dually between Painted Hills Natural Beef and Oregon Cattle Women's is the Oregon State Steak.
Oh, yes.
I love this. We are
I
working very hard on
know.
this. We're in the throes of it now.
I know
Can you
it.
talk about some of that experience?
So, Senator Todd Nash, who is a former president of Oregon Cattlemen's Association, had reached out to me because he saw that the legislature named the potato the Oregon state vegetable. And he felt very strongly that that potato needed a steak next to it. And so we did a little research, him and I, and talked to some folks. And we found that Oklahoma was the only other state so far in the union to have a state steak, and they had chosen the ribeye. And the ribeye is kind of the quintessential,
Who
top.
doesn't love a
Who
ribeye,
doesn't love a ribeye, right? You eat prime rib at Christmas, and ribeye steak is so well known. People talk about tenderloin or filet as being the apex of the experience, but I can tell you from experience that there's a lot of good steaks, that across the beef spectrum. So we chatted quite a bit and kind of settled on, and I talked to you about it too. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
settled on the T-bone, and it came together beautifully because we felt like it was so representative of the state of Oregon. And there's
Mm-hmm.
two sides to it. There's the New York side, and there's the tenderloin side, and then there's the bone in the middle, which kind of represents the Cascade Mountains, and the fact that Oregon is kind of that diverse state with two distinct sides, the west side and the east side, and yet we all have value, and there's beauty and quality in all of it, and we can celebrate all of it, and it kind of brings people together. And so we settled on the steak, frankly, under some protests, because there was a lot of people that really felt like it should be the ribeye, and I had to defend myself quite often as to why I thought the T-bone was better. Not to mention, in our experience in our direct to retail business online, the T-bone and the porterhouse, which is kind of the big sister or big brother of the T-bone steak, are the best selling. And so I would say that in the Northwest, the T-bones are very well regarded. And so that process has advanced, and it looks like we're gonna make it home. So the Oregon Cattle Women have supported the effort, and just recently, in fact, supported the steaks to be served at a Ways and Means dinner for the legislature. So yeah, we're all in. We are all in for the T-bone to be the steak.
The other thing I love about the T-bone is like it is a steak fit for Sasquatch, you know. And being from the Pacific Northwest, like I mean, Sasquatch is our mascot, sort of by default in the Pacific Northwest, right? So Bigfoot, big steak, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I just love that campaign so much, and I'm so excited to see that whole legislature come through, and when we get to celebrate it being official with a T-bone, as we should.
I know, I can't wait. Hopefully the the renovation projects get done so we can celebrate in the front of the Capitol. So
yeah, would be so cool. Scout, do you want to ask our favorite
I do.
closing
I've
question?
been waiting for this because I feel like Gabrielle will have a great one. So yeah, you mentioned before we started recording that you've been listening to our podcast. So I'm just going to come out and ask you. I'm not going to do any prep work here, but if you have questions, I have examples lined up. But would love to know, what is your soft launch to Monday?
I'm fortunate to work from home on Mondays.
And I love that even more.
So I used to work from home on Fridays, or I work a four nines is basically kind of what I was shooting for at the time in my career. And about 3 years ago, I took a 12-week sabbatical. I kind of hit a wall and just needed to detach a little bit. And so I went down to half time from home and spent a lot of time sitting on my patio with a cup of coffee and some good music and some personal development, but not a lot of personal development, just enough to kind of keep my brain working. But mostly just kind of a reset. And when I came back from that reset, I went to the rest of the board of directors and I said, you know what, at this age and this time in my career, I need a little more flexibility. And so I had been working Monday through Thursday for 20 years or more. And I had said all along, once my kids had graduated, I would flip my days to work on Fridays so that the other moms could be with their kids for sports, because my kids' sports were done. And so that was kind of the inspiration between flipping Friday for Monday. So I am work from home on Monday. I try really hard to give myself grace, just as I do the people that I work with. Because it's hard. I set really high standards for myself. And so I try to prepare for Monday just as if I was walking in the door at work. I check my emails. I'm one of those terrible people that does it 24/7, as we've already kind of alluded to.
Me too.
Yeah, but I did, through that process of that sabbatical, I did learn to detach a little more. And so I just try to get myself in a good mental space on Sunday evening where I feel like I can hit the ground running. That said, today is Tuesday. It feels like Monday. Lisa also she swapped her days this week because Natalie's coming later in the week, and she's feeling it too. It is a very Monday Tuesday. So I don't know how successful it is.
Extra cup of coffee, maybe. I think one thing that I really admire about you is that you're always so good about, um, also making it a priority to work on yourself. I think every time I've been there, it's like, hang on, I need my workout, right?
Yeah,
And you are very dedicated to spending that time, one, clearing your head, but two, taking care of you, because we can't be the best that we can be in the office if we're not taking care of ourselves. And we can't be the best we can be at home if we're not
right.
taking care of ourselves. So anyway, I've always admired that about you.
I'm at a stage in my life when it's a little bit easier too. I have little kids at home. So, or all the other things, your 50s are different than your 30s. And they just are. And
Sure.
so you're where you prioritize and the things that you bring to the top, the cream rises, right? The things that you bring to the
Sure.
top are a little bit different in your 50s than you do in your 30s. And, I'm grateful my parents are aging. I was able to take my dad to get cataract surgery last week and take a day to have to do that. And, just finding those things of importance that you can set aside the time for.
Sure. Sure. Well, Gabrielle, we cannot thank you enough. We have such admiration for you as a leader, for everything that we've done together over the last, well, I guess 6-ish years now, maybe a little over at this point. But, we are just so thankful for Painted Hills, for you and Will and Lisa and Melissa. And I could go through the entire list of the amazing people there at Painted Hills, from the board to the people that work interior, but, or in it, every day they're in the office. But we appreciate you for taking your time, out to be part of the podcast. Anything else you want to say before we close her out?
I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. I love that. I love that. Well, thanks everybody for joining episode 10 of McFarland Minutes, your soft launch to Monday. We'll see you next week.